Israel is Alive and Kicking with Uriel Lynn, who will speak about the plight of the small businesses in Israel during the coronavirus crisis, which is a problem all around the world in countries starting their exit. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel, so on behalf of all of us here, we convey our sympathy with the Holocaust survivors, most of whom are separated today from their families, and we wish them good health and speedy reunion with their loved ones. Uriel Lynn is the president of the Federation of the Israeli Chambers of Commerce and the Tel Aviv and Central Israel Chamber of Commerce. He studied law at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the University of California, Berkeley, and he served as a member of the Knesset for Likud between 1984 and 1992. Mr. Lynn, thanks for joining us. Why don't you start with a short introduction and then we'll open up for Q&A. You are on mute, so just switch to unmute. Okay.
Uri, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. And you mentioned the Holocaust, which is very, very hard to every one of us. Even we have 75 years passing already. I can tell you, very frankly, I told my wife, when I was a child, I read many books about the Holocaust. Today, I cannot. I cannot because I can't today fathom. I cannot really contain the fact that this kind of thing happened in our history. Simply, it's impossible to understand. I'm telling you today, after 75 years, to me today, it's hard to understand how in the annals of humanity, we have reached this kind of a thing. Unbelievable. So I know we are talking about a different subject today, but I had to express my feeling about this terrible memorial that we are talking about today, Uri. Thank you very much. Now, regarding the plight of independent, self-employed people, we have to understand that our government and the state was entirely unprepared for this kind of pandemic or epidemic. This is the fact. All of a sudden, we were confronted with a problem of magic magnitude. And the first thing was what to do. How do you really curb this kind of spreading right from the beginning? And what kind of measures you have to take? So what really evolved was that the government, in the terms of closures, was very stringent, very harsh, very immediate, while at the same time, they were not the supporting really planned how you to support businesses while you are really telling them not to open their businesses. How do you really support them in a matter of day-to-day living? And how do you really support them that after the crisis really will start passing and we can really ease those kind of a closure? How do we support them in being able to revive their businesses again? And everybody understand it's not that simple. It's not going to be right away. It's a matter of a process and a hard process. So I must admit that we have really a fundamental problem. We don't have today a government that deals with economic matters. Simply, we do not have a government. We have the Prime Minister, which is very, very busy in many, many other matters. We know very well. I mean, right now, the unity government, let's hope it's going to be successful. But the real conception and the real dealing with the economic program is done by the senior bureaucrats in the Ministry of the Treasury, not by the government. If the government, for example, had to take a stand today and say, hey, what is the economic plan really, embracing economic plan that we have to launch in order to really allow business to exist and also allow them later on to be able to revive again and start moving up again, we don't have this kind of a program. What we have is a patches, trying to solve here a problem, trying to save here a problem. But I must say, self-employed are considered to be today the underdogs in our business sector, because for many, many years, there was a discrimination. The government did not really give them the same rights that you give to employees. And self-employed is a person who takes the whole risk in building a business. And once there is a problem, once the business is closed, one is unemployed, there is no really government support from what we call Bituach Leumi, national insurance, to those people. So they were caught in a situation that on one hand, for many, many years, they were really the underprivileged. For many, many years, they were discriminated. And all of a sudden, they were hurt the most, more than any other sector in the economy. This was the main problem. So the government is trying to solve this problem, but this kind of a patch program, I call it, which is not really, it's not systematic, it's not all embracing. It's really, how do we solve here a problem? How do we solve here a problem? And what they're really giving right now, the self-employed people, is really a location for the months March and April. It will have to be given also in May, but it's really a matter of day-to-day existence, because they are self-employed, they lost their source of income, and they need some income in order to keep on going. But it's not a money by which they can later on start rebuilding their businesses. So they are going to be, unless we're going to see a real change in the planning and economic program of giving a real answer to those problems, the self-employed people is going to be terribly, terribly hurt. I'm very sorry to say that, but this is going to be the situation. I have the hope that today, after we're going to have a unity government and a new government, and by the way, I was in the Knesset at the time we had a unity government, and the unity government 1985 was the one who really put the Israeli economy on the right track. This was the time, 85, that we have managed by the unity government to do the right program that moved the whole economy ahead. If Israel is considered today by some people as a strong economy, it's because of the economic program of 1985, which was launched and really formulated by the unity government at that time.
Okay, let's go from the general description to some details. The government established a fund of 8 billion shekels to deal with it. What's wrong with that?
Well, this is the whole point. Since the government has a problem today, and I'm telling you, this is going to the basic problem. The government today does not, where are going to be the sources? Where they're going to take the money without really creating an unprecedented, of course, deficit. So they don't really have today the courage to take from the public sector and move that to the business sector. So because of that, there is a pressure of lack of sources, because I said we don't have really the government, what really being done today is, as you said, is right now allocating to self-employed people the small amount they said, and then they're trying to put the whole emphasis on getting loans. Loans from whom? From the banks. Now, this is very nice that you have a guarantee, the government gives a guarantee, 85% per each individual loan, yet a total guarantee is 15% of the total. The banks are acting like banks. They said, fine, but then we are not going to give money to whichever business that we do not believe is going to be able to repay the debt. This is how they act, and then the bank, after all, has to act responsibly. If, for example, you have a 100% guarantee, then of course, the bank can give money freely, and it's going to be terrible. So there must be some responsibility that the bank has to take. But however, the problem is this kind of a system was not really polished in the right way. Each bank has a different demands. Each bank has a different kind of forms that you have to fill up, information that you have to give them. It's very slow, they're very cautious. The very fact that the government is really making this guarantee, doesn't have really a very strong impact on them. They do not want to take a risk. And that's really the situation. And because of that, even this 8 billion, which was allocated in the way of a loan, is really a very, very non-significant sums of money have been transferred to businesses because of this structure. This is the wrong structure. The structure, the real structure should have been what we did in the year 26 in the Lebanon #2 war, where we really were compensating businesses according to the reduction of their turnover and the reduction of their income, comparing the current period to the other period the previous year. So this was done. This was really polished at that time and refined. I must say we had quite involvement in that, but the Treasury is afraid that this kind of a formula is going to cost too much because they don't know when this kind of a crisis is going to end. And I think this is the basic mistake they do. They fail in really getting resources that should have been taken from the public sector, and they failed in really forming a formula of compensation that real money will go to businesses and not send them to the banks to take loans. And this is one of the basic problems in the program.
There are alternative ways to help small businesses. For example, freezing city taxes, or finding other ways in which you don't have to send people to the banks. Why don't explore alternative ways?
Well, that's the whole point. Then they did it in a very limited way. Let's say, call it this way. We know very well in each business, in order to survive, there is a question of liquidity. First of all, you may absorb losses for a certain period of time, but liquidity is the essential matter for businesses to be able to carry on. You need to buy services, you need to buy raw material, you need to buy product, and so on and so on. If you cannot do that, you cannot exist. So liquidity is the main problem. Now, they're trying to solve this kind of liquidity in a very limited way. How? They said, okay, whatever taxes you paid in the month, February or March, we'll give you back. Now, February is relevant. March, the profits were very, very low, but this is one step they did. Another step is really municipal charges. That right now is still the debate, and they want to give this kind of a 25% reduction all over the year, while a lot of businesses are suffering now, and they need those 3 months free now, not to spread it all over the year. So I would say those are the two main steps that so far were done, and more or less it's being activated. Now, in addition to that, they're talking about a fund of 6 million that will be channeled, money I'm talking right now, not loans, to small businesses. But it was not yet formulated by which criteria, who will be the businesses, by which criteria you give this money. So there is here a situation of declaration. I mean, they are giving amount of money, which is impressive. And later on, when it comes to really doing the works in really giving the money, they haven't really yet formulated the ways and how it works. So we are still, in this very minute we are talking about, the real resource of businesses is to go and to get loans. And that's the problem. And whatever was done so far is very, very limited, or very, very, I would say, almost insignificant for future existence of businesses.
So you foresee a situation by which we come out of this crisis with the public sector strong as ever, and the private and business sector hampered and hurt?
Say it again, please, Uri, please.
I ask you if you foresee a situation that we come out of this crisis with the public sector as strong as ever, and while the private sector and the business sector is suffering.
Well, let's put it this way. This is one of the key problems today. We have over 1 million, 1,100,000 unemployed. It doesn't matter if they were really put out of job or put into what we call here chalat, which is really a leave without pay, still without work, 1,100,000. All of them are coming from the private public sector. I'm sorry, private business sector. The public sector, there's no one which is unemployed. Each one of them is employed. They're getting the full salary. So the situation is that whoever is really carrying today the load of this crisis is first of all businesses from the private business sector. And in addition to that, and 1,100,000 employees also coming from the private business sector. So this, I'm very much afraid, may create a real problem in a terms of social clash, social stirring that is going to be very bad unless we're going to solve it. And this is what I would say today we are expecting from a new government to do, to try to put also the public sector to contribute in solving this problem. For example, we have a very high pensions to many people who served in the public sector. Judges, senior military commanders, and so on and so on. Some of them even are getting a double pension from the state, from the source of the state. Some of them, not all of them. And today, the total salary of people working for the government is 184 billion Israeli shekel. Out of a total budget, 2019, of close to, let's say, to 500 Israeli billion shekel. Out of this, 100 billion Israeli shekel is a matter of serving debts. So what is really remaining out of the 400 billion Israeli shekel, 184 are salaries and pensions to people who work in the public sector. Now this is terrible. And I can tell you, in the last 10 years, the public sector in Israel, manpower, grew by 95% in the last 10 years, while the business sector grew by 35%. There is here a structural problem that nobody is really facing, nobody try yet to confront and deal with. And this is one of the things they have to do. So some ministers of the Treasury are looking to have good relations with the Histadrut, the major labor union. Yet they are not dealing really with doing what we need to do in improving the public sector in our country.
Some countries like Ireland and France dealt with this issue by paying the salaries of employees who were sent on chalat, on pay without leave. So you think this is a way to maybe, if not reform the whole system, at least to deal with the current stress?
Let's put it this way, on a temporary basis, yes, because we are in a crisis today. And the people here in this country, and I want to tell you, we have to understand, in Israel, the total employees in the private business sector is no more than 2.6 million. That's all, 2.6 million. Now, out of that, when you have 1,100,000 unemployed, it means this is a very big problem. So nowadays, temporarily, yes, we have also to move to live without a pay of people in the public sector in order to reduce the payment of the government. So people will tell you, hey, this is also being paid by the government. Yes, live without a pay is also paid by the government, but not in the same measure. It's more or less 50%. 50% of what you get if you are still employed. So there is a very, very big saving here. But I'm saying this is only temporary. The matter is that we have to work more on a more far-reaching reform. And I say we can do that without really laying off people. Simply, people are living naturally, either because they're old or because they want to leave the public sector. Don't take more people instead of them. Just let the public sector being reduced gradually without really laying off employees. This will be the right way to do that. However, and I said before, we haven't seen yet the government or the Ministry of the Treasury who would like to deal with this kind of a problem.
You seriously think this government, this new government we just saw formulated, will take this seriously when they're talking about 36 ministries and 16 deputy ministers, vice ministers? This is a kind of example, or this is showing the way in which you're recommending?
This is a very bad example. And I have seen those bad examples many times in my political career. I want just to remind everybody that while I was in the Israeli Knesset as the chairman of the Constitution Committee, we passed the special law, the change in the system of government, according to which, and it was supported by Netanyahu, the prime minister can serve no more than 2 terms, and ministers, we will not have more than 18. Now, you got to matter a person who is being a chance to be a prime minister. He needs a coalition, and the coalition government, the pressure to form a coalition government tend to be the most important target. How do you form a coalition? So within all those pressures to make a coalition, and almost it may even come to, listen, 120 members of Knesset. 1/4 of them are ministers. And if you take also the vice ministers or deputy ministers, you may come to 50% of members of Knesset who have executive jobs. Now, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is being caused by the special electoral system that we have in Israel, and the very, very fact that you need to form a coalition, and then you have to take into consideration this wants to be a minister, this wants to be a minister, and so on and so on. And they haven't found yet the way to solve that coalition problem. And I'm telling you, it goes to the roots of our system of government and the electoral system in Israel, the coalition government. However, I'm not saying it should be done. I think they should have really, in this present Knesset, pass again the law for the direct election of the prime minister in order to solve those kind of problems and really be able to come out with a result after the election and tell you, hey, this person is going to be the prime minister. So we don't have it today. We got back to the old system. After I managed to pass the direct election of the prime minister, we moved back to the old system for all kind of consideration and so on and so on. But however, we are caught in this kind of a system today.
There's a question about the Bituach Leumi, the Social Security Institute, which serves both people from the public sector and the business sector. Don't you think they're putting too much strain on Social Security, so it will endanger the solvency, the ability of Bituach Leumi to serve people in the future?
There is no question about it. The Bituach Lomi today is in a very, very big danger. The Bituach Lomi doesn't have the resources to go on with paying leave pay to 1,100,000 people. They will be completely depleted, and the government will have to pass amount of money they simply do not have. So this is the reason why today I think economic consideration, budget consideration are taking more priority, because people understand we will not be able to do that. So today, definitely, Bituach Lomi needs to be protected, and the only way to do that is by really starting again to move the economy, allow more people to get to work. Now, what I said is, after all, what is that we want to achieve? We want to achieve social distancing. We want to achieve a situation that a pandemic will not really spread. How it should not be spread? We want to avoid a contact between one person to another person. Now, so far it was done by a drastic closure and a shutdown and so on and so on. We have to do it on a measures, number of measures which will achieve the same result, not by a closure. And we should allow more businesses to be open and more people to come by, of course, I mean, regarding all the guidelines, all the directives of hygienic and mask and so on, that will achieve the same result that we want to achieve by the simple overall measure of closure and lockdown and shutdown and all this kind of thing.
Well, the government has introduced the purple badge arrangement, which puts the responsibility on the business owners.
Yes, I think the government, the new government today will put a great emphasis on the economy. Even if they don't want to, I mean, because everybody understands that we're not going to put today a real emphasis, and we're not going to really have a real economic plan which is really balanced and prevent businesses from going bankrupt, then it's going to be terrible happening in our economy in Israel, and then later on the necessary resources to do everything that you want to do in matter of security or culture or even the health infrastructure in our country and so on and so on. Yeah, the new government has a challenge, a big challenge, and the big question today is how they are going to face this kind of a challenge. I think they can do it, but then you need to be a little more brave. You need to take some risk. You need to understand that you cannot do it by being nice to everybody. Somebody, where you have to, need to sacrifice. And I'm saying that because we've gone through that, as I mentioned before, in the economic plan of our country in 1985, which was a really very important economic program. This is the key to understand that today, the Israeli economy, at that time, every sector sacrificed. The employees, their salaries in real terms were reduced by 36%. And prices were frozen and no more devaluation. So everybody had at that time to understand he has to make his own contribution. And the only way of getting from a situation like that is understanding that we have here a partnership, not sacrificing, not assisting, partnership, whereby each sector must contribute. And once we don't understand that, we cannot solve the problem.
I can second what you say, because I remember my salary was cut in 85, I believe it was, 30%, and I don't remember anybody going to the streets to protest, because we felt we are all in it together, and everybody has to give something. I'm not sure this is the case today, and there's a question from one of our journalists, if you think the current government or the new government will have the willpower to move to the direction you're endorsing.
Uri, this is the reason why you need a unity government. What you said before, you did not go to the streets. Why? because Shimon Peres, the Labour Party, were part of this program. If, for example, they were not part of this program, they could not do this program. That is, there are some programs, economic programs, otherwise you cannot do if you don't have a unity government, because the opposition also will attack you, rightly or wrongly, but they will attack you. So we have to understand that this is really today, unity government is really a necessity, good or bad, with problems, with flaws, yes. But I must say, it has to be done. We need unity government.
Last question. Let me be the devil's advocate, okay? Usually businesses are closing. I mean, those which are not efficient, which are not relevant, they are just closing. We have tens of thousands of them closing every year, many of them in the food industry. Isn't that a good opportunity to let those which are efficient and vital and vibrant to persevere, and the rest will have to go?
Definitely and definitely. Of course, when you have a problem like that and a business has to revive, you must be very efficient. You must be very efficient. Why? First of all, it's coming out with more debts, and you need to pay the debts. You need to pay the debt not only to the government, but you need to pay the debt also to your suppliers, that you cannot exist without them. So businesses by force will be more efficient. There is no question about it. But I'm very much afraid we are going to really lose the opportunity to make the necessary reforms in the public sector. They're very difficult to make reform them. We have today the opportunity to do it. And I hope we're not going to lose this opportunity, because as long as we mobilize more and more resources to the public sector, then the load on the business sector is higher, and the ability of the government to really have a balanced budget is being reduced. And then later on, some people come and say, hey, we need more resources. Let's really make more taxes, or let's really raise more taxes, which is very, very bad for the reviving of businesses. It takes the buying power away, and it makes running a business harder. So this is why I'm saying is that we need to see today the right balance, and we have also a certain opportunity in doing it. I hope the unity government will not miss this opportunity.
Mr. Lynn, thank you very much for being with us. I want to thank Michal Orly, spokesperson of the Chambers of Commerce, and my colleagues from JPC for facilitating this. Heads up for our next webinar. This afternoon at 4 p.m. we'll have Professor Uriel Lynn from Sheba Hospital, who will give us a report from the front line of fighting the virus. And tomorrow at 11 a.m. we'll host Shai Doron as his team from the Jerusalem Foundation, who will update us on what is being done for the underprivileged communities of our city during the crisis. Thank you all for being with us. And thank you, Mr. Lynn, again.